The floorboard crumbled beneath her knees. Maya Torres, single mother, $43 in her account, daughter sleeping 10 feet away, stared into the darkness beneath her rotting island shack. The metal case crusted with 50 years of rust, the bearer bonds inside worth $80 million, and the compass that pointed the wrong direction. She was about to discover that some inheritances come with a body count. The floorboard gave way like a broken promise. Maya Torres dropped to her knees, flashlight clattering across warped wood. The beams spun wild shadows across walls that hadn't seen paint in decades. Salt air poured through cracks in the ceiling. Outside, wind rattled the windows like something trying to get in. She'd bought the island's cheapest property for $12,000, every penny she had left after the divorce. Now she was kneeling in rot, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. Across the room, her daughter Lily slept in the only dry corner, 9 years old, wrapped in car blankets that still smelled like their old life in Seattle. The life before everything fell apart. Lily's inhaler sat within arm's reach, always within arm's reach. Maya turned the flashlight back to the hole in the floor. The board had crumbled under her weight, revealing darkness beneath. She'd been checking for structural damage, making sure the place wouldn't collapse on them in the night. Instead, she found something else. A metal case, military grade, crusted with barnacles and rust, wedged between the joists like someone had hidden it there and never come back. Her hands shook as she pried it loose. Heavy. God, it was heavy. The latches fought her, corroded with salt and time, but finally gave with a crack that sounded too loud in the silence. Inside, wrapped in brittle plastic, stacks of paper. Bearer bonds. She'd seen them once in a movie. The dates read 1973. Never cashed, never claimed. Her throat went dry as she counted zeros. Also inside, a tarnished silver compass that felt warm in her palm, coordinates engraved on the back, and a faded Polaroid of a young couple standing on a boat, their faces bright with something that looked like hope. Maya lifted the compass to the flashlight beam. The needle trembled, pointed northwest. Not north. Through the broken window, she could see storm clouds gathering over the black water. The locals had warned her about this shack, said the last owner vanished without a trace. She looked at her sleeping daughter, at the bonds worth millions, at the compass pointing toward something she couldn't see. What she'd found would either save them or bury them. She just didn't know which yet. Maya didn't sleep. She sat at the small folding table she'd bought at a mainland thrift store, the metal case open in front of her. The bearer bonds looked fake in the dim light. Too clean, too perfect. Like props from a movie about people whose problems weren't real. But the weight of them felt real enough. Outside, the storm had arrived. Rain hammered the tin roof. Wind screamed through gaps in the walls she hadn't found yet. Every 20 seconds, the lighthouse on the far point swept its beam across the window, painting everything ghost white before plunging it back into shadow. Lily stirred in her blankets but didn't wake. She'd always been a deep sleeper, even when they'd lived in the car those 2 weeks between apartments. Even when Maya had cried in the front seat, trying to be quiet enough not to wake her. Maya picked up the compass, turned it over. The coordinates engraved on the back were precise, etched by someone who knew what they were doing. 48.2234 degrees north, 124.8919 degrees west. She'd been a marine biologist once, before the marriage, before Emma. Before her ex-husband's lawyer had convinced the judge that staying home with a sick child meant she'd abandoned her career potential and therefore deserved nothing in the settlement. She knew how to read coordinates. These pointed somewhere off the island's north shore. The Polaroid lay beside the compass. The couple looked so young. The woman's hand rested on the man's shoulder. Behind them, a fishing boat with a name painted on the hull. She couldn't quite make it out in the faded image. Maya had bought this place sight unseen. A condemned fisherman's cottage on Crow's End Island. Population 300. Ferry access only. The online auction had been her last-ditch attempt at stability. Somewhere cheap. Somewhere Lily could breathe clean air. Somewhere the creditors couldn't follow. The island clerk who'd processed the paperwork had seemed nervous, rushed through the signatures. Wouldn't meet her eyes when Maya asked about the property's history. Just a old place, the woman had said. Nobody's lived there in years. You sure you want it? Maya had been sure. She'd had to be sure. Now, staring at $80 million in bonds that might be worthless or might be salvation, she wasn't sure of anything. Lily coughed in her sleep. That wet sound that meant her lungs were acting up again. The inhaler was running low. Maya had exactly $43 in her checking account, and the next ferry wasn't until Thursday. She couldn't leave. Not yet. Not even if she wanted to. The compass needle trembled on the table, still pointing northwest. Still wrong. Through the rain, she heard footsteps on the gravel outside. Heavy? Deliberate? Coming toward the door, the footsteps stopped at the door. Maya closed the metal case with trembling hands, shoved it under the sink behind a rusted bucket. The compass and Polaroid went into her jacket pocket. The bearer bonds felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. 3 sharp knocks. Hello? A man's voice. Friendly. Too friendly for 3 in the morning. Sorry to bother you. Saw your lights on. Maya wiped her palms on her jeans, checked that Lily was still asleep, opened the door just wide enough to see out. The man on her porch was maybe 60, wearing an expensive rain jacket that looked out of place on this forgotten island. Silver hair, calm smile. Eyes that studied her face a little too carefully. Harlan Cross, he said, extending a hand she didn't take. I own the marina. Welcome to Crow's End. It's 3 in the morning. Is it? He glanced at his watch like he was surprised. Storm kept me up. Saw you were awake. Thought I'd introduce myself. His gaze drifted past her, scanning the interior of the shack. Settling in okay? Fine. This old place. He shook his head. Been empty a long time. Shame, really. Good bones, though, if you know where to look. Something in the way he said it made her skin crawl. I should get back to my daughter, Maya said. Of course. Just wanted to say. He pulled a business card from his pocket. If you decide this place is too much work, I'd be happy to take it off your hands. 50,000. Cash. As is. Maya stared at him. She'd paid 12. That's generous, she said carefully. I like to help newcomers. Island's a hard place if you don't have friends. His smile never wavered. Think about it. No pressure. But the offer won't last long. He turned and walked back into the rain. She watched his taillights disappear down the gravel road. $50,000 for a shack with holes in the roof and rot in the floors. He knew. Somehow he knew. Morning came soft and golden. The storm had scrubbed the world clean. Maya woke to light streaming through the broken windows, dust motes dancing like snow in the beams. Outside, everything looked almost beautiful. Pine trees dripping with rainwater. Wildflowers she hadn't noticed before, growing in patches of sunlight. The ocean visible through the branches, glittering and calm. For a moment, she let herself imagine this could work, that they could be happy here. Lily woke slowly, stretching in her nest of blankets. Her breathing sounded clear for the first time in weeks. The island air was already helping. Mom? She rubbed her eyes. It smells like Christmas trees. Maya smiled. That's the pines, baby. They made instant oatmeal on the camping stove, ate it sitting on the porch steps, watching birds Maya couldn't name flit between branches. The morning was so quiet she could hear the rhythm of the waves. 1, 2, 1, 2, like a heartbeat. The compass sat on the step between them. Lily picked it up, curious. What's this? Something I found. It's broken, I think. Lily turned it over in her small hands. It's pretty, like a treasure. Maya's throat tightened. Yeah, like a treasure. They walked to school together, following the gravel road that wound through the forest. The island revealed itself slowly. Houses tucked back in the trees, smoke rising from chimneys. A small cemetery with weathered stones. Fishing boats bobbing in the marina, their paint peeling but their lines perfectly coiled. It looked like a postcard, like the kind of place people dreamed about when they were tired of cities. But Maya noticed other things too. The way curtains twitched when they passed. The man working on his boat who stopped to watch them. The woman sweeping her porch who turned away when Maya waved. The island was watching them, waiting to see what they'd do. The schoolhouse was a small white building at the edge of town. Maybe 20 kids total, all ages. Mrs. Chen met them at the door, her face kind and open. You must be Lily. Welcome. She bent down to Lily's level. We're glad you're here. Lily looked to Maya, uncertain. It's okay, baby. I'll be back at 3. After Lily disappeared inside, Mrs. Chen touched Maya's arm. Are you settling in? The old fisherman's place, right? Trying to. Something flickered across the teacher's face. Not quite worry, not quite fear. Something in between. There's a volunteer who helps with the children, Grace Hartley. Wonderful woman. She's been on this island her whole life. Mrs. Chen paused. She might want to talk to you. About the house. Why? Just history. The island has a lot of it. Before Maya could ask more, Mrs. Chen smiled and went back inside. Maya spent the morning making the shack feel less like a crime scene. She swept, patched holes with cardboard and duct tape, pulled up the worst floorboards, revealing dark earth beneath. Each board she removed made her think about what else might be hiding under there. What other secrets the house held in its bones. The work felt good, physical, real, something she could control. By noon, her hands were blistered and her back ached, but the main room looked almost livable. She stood in the doorway, surveying her progress. Through the window, she could see a deer picking its way through the undergrowth. So quiet, so peaceful. Too peaceful. She walked to the island's only store for supplies. The building was old but tidy, with a porch that sagged in the middle. Inside smelled like coffee and sawdust. The woman behind the counter was the same one who'd processed the sale paperwork. Younger than Maya had first thought. Maybe 40. Nervous hands that wouldn't stay still. Settling in? The woman asked, not quite meeting Maya's eyes. Getting there. The clerk rang up the duct tape, nails, and canned soup without speaking. Then, as Maya was about to leave, she said quietly, That house, it's got a history. Maya turned back. The woman glanced toward the empty aisles, lowered her voice. Last person who lived there was a fisherman. Long time ago. 30, maybe 40 years. He just disappeared one day. Boat found empty. They said it was an accident, but she stopped herself. People talk, is all. This island, we remember things. What kind of things? But the bell over the door chimed. An older man entered, nodded to them both. The clerk's face closed like a door. Have a good day, she said, louder now, professional. Maya left with more questions than answers. That afternoon, she buried the metal case in the woods, wrapped it in garbage bags and placed it in a hole she dug 30 feet from the back porch. 3 stones arranged in a triangle marked the spot. The bonds would be safe there, hidden. She kept the compass and the Polaroid. Back inside, she studied the photo in the afternoon light. The couple looked so young. The man had his arm around the woman's waist. Behind them, a fishing boat. She could almost make out the name on the hull now. Something with an R. Who were they? Why had they left this behind? Maya pulled out her laptop. The cell signal was weak but functional. She searched. Bearer bonds. 1,970 seconds criminal. The results talked about money laundering, untraceable securities, perfect for hiding wealth from governments or enemies, or for keeping evidence safe. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. You should take Harlan's offer, but Maya noticed other things too. The way curtains twitched when they passed. The man working on his boat who stopped to watch them. The woman sweeping her porch who turned away when Maya waved. The island was watching them, waiting to see what they'd do. The schoolhouse was a small white building at the edge of town. Maybe 20 kids total, all ages. Mrs. Chen met them at the door, her face kind and open. You must be Lily. Welcome. She bent down to Lily's level. We're glad you're here. Lily looked to Maya, uncertain. It's okay, baby. I'll be back at 3. After Lily disappeared inside, Mrs. Chen touched Maya's arm. Are you settling in? The old fisherman's place, right? Trying to. Something flickered across the teacher's face. Not quite worry, not quite fear. Something in between. There's a volunteer who helps with the children. Grace Hartley. Wonderful woman. She's been on this island her whole life. Mrs. Chen paused. She might want to talk to you. About the house. Why? Just history. The island has a lot of it. Before Maya could ask more, Mrs. Chen smiled and went back inside. Maya spent the morning making the shack feel less like a crime scene. She swept, patched holes with cardboard and duct tape, pulled up the worst floorboards, revealing dark earth beneath. Each board she removed made her think about what else might be hiding under there, what other secrets the house held in its bones. The work felt good, physical, real, something she could control. By noon, her hands were blistered and her back ached, but the main room looked almost livable. She stood in the doorway, surveying her progress. Through the window, she could see a deer picking its way through the undergrowth. So quiet, so peaceful. Too peaceful. She walked to the island's only store for supplies. The building was old but tidy, with a porch that sagged in the middle. Inside smelled like coffee and sawdust. The woman behind the counter was the same one who'd processed the sale paperwork, younger than Maya had first thought. Maybe 40. Nervous hands that wouldn't stay still. Settling in? The woman asked, not quite meeting Maya's eyes. Getting there. The clerk rang up the duct tape, nails, and canned soup without speaking. Then, as Maya was about to leave, she said quietly, That house, it's got a history. Maya turned back. The woman glanced toward the empty aisles, lowered her voice. Last person who lived there was a fisherman. Long time ago. 30, maybe 40 years. He just disappeared one day. Boat found empty. They said it was an accident, but she stopped herself. People talk, is all. This island. We remember things. What kind of things? But the bell over the door chimed. An older man entered, nodded to them both. The clerk's face closed like a door. Have a good day, she said, louder now. Professional. Maya left with more questions than answers. That afternoon, she buried the metal case in the woods, wrapped it in garbage bags, and placed it in a hole she'd dug 30 feet from the back porch. 3 stones arranged in a triangle marked the spot. The bonds would be safe there, hidden. She kept the compass and the Polaroid. Back inside, she studied the photo in the afternoon light. The couple looked so young. The man had his arm around the woman's waist. Behind them, a fishing boat. She could almost make out the name on the hull now. Something with an R. Who were they? Why had they left this behind? Maya pulled out her laptop. The cell signal was weak but functional. She searched. Bearer bonds 1,970 seconds criminal. The results talked about money laundering, untraceable securities. Perfect for hiding wealth from governments or enemies. Or for keeping evidence safe. Her phone buzzed. text from an unknown number. You should take Harlan's offer. Maya didn't report the warning scratched into her porch. She scrubbed it away with sandpaper until her arms ached, until the wood was smooth and the letters were ghosts. But even after the words disappeared, she could still see them. Leave while you can. The island knew she'd found something, and the island was waiting to see what she'd do. That morning, the fog came in thick. It rolled off the ocean like something alive, swallowing the trees, the road, everything. Maya drove to the bank blind, following the yellow line down the center because she couldn't see the edges. The island's only bank was squeezed between the post office and a bait shop. Inside smelled like old carpet and coffee that had been burning too long. A clock ticked on the wall, too loud, like it was counting down to something. The woman behind the counter looked up, smiled with her whole face. Real warmth, not the careful kind Maya had been seeing. You must be new. I'm Rita Chen. Maya Torres. I just bought the fisherman's place. Rita's smile held. Welcome to Crow's End. How are you settling in? Maya glanced at the empty lobby, pulled out 3 bearer bonds, laid them on the counter like cards in a game she didn't know how to play. I found these. In the house. I need to know if they're real. The warmth drained from Rita's face. She picked up the bonds, studied them under the desk lamp. Her hands started shaking, just slightly. Just enough that Maya noticed. Where did you find these? Rita's voice had dropped to a whisper. Hidden. Under the floorboards. Rita set them down carefully, like they might explode. She looked toward the window. The fog pressed against the glass like it was trying to get in. We need to talk, but not here. She wrote an address on a deposit slip. Come to my house. Tonight, after dark. Park 2 blocks away and walk. Don't tell anyone you're coming. Are they real? Rita met her eyes. They're real. And Maya, people died looking for these. The fog didn't lift all day. It hung over everything, muffling sound, turning the world gray. Maya tried to work on the shack, but the silence pressed down like a hand on her chest. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like footsteps. Every shift of wind sounded like breathing. The house felt different now, like it was listening. She picked Lily up at 3. The schoolyard was empty except for her daughter and the elderly woman standing beside her. Grace Hartley moved slowly, leaning on a carved wooden cane. She watched Maya approach with eyes that had seen too much. Mrs. Torres. Grace's voice was soft, careful. Could we talk for a moment? Lily ran ahead to collect pine cones in the ditch. Maya and Grace stood beneath a massive tree. Fog dripped from the branches like rain. Your daughter mentioned you found some old things in the house, Grace said. Papers. A compass. Maya's throat tightened. Just junk left behind. The previous owner was my son. Grace's eyes filled but didn't spill over. James Hartley. He disappeared in 1974. They found his boat empty 10 miles offshore. Said he drowned. She paused. But mothers know. And I knew my son didn't just fall overboard. The fog seemed to press closer. The compass, Maya said quietly. It has coordinates engraved on it. Grace's grip tightened on her cane. James was meticulous about everything. A federal agent, working undercover. He was investigating something on this island. Something that powerful people wanted to stay buried. Her voice cracked. He wouldn't have been careless. He wouldn't have just died. What was he investigating? Grace looked around. The schoolyard was empty. The street was empty. But she still lowered her voice, like the fog itself might be listening. Smuggling. Drugs, money, things that came in on boats in the dark. But it wasn't just criminals. It was respectable families. People who owned businesses, who ran the town council. Who decided what happened on this island? She paused. Harlan Cross's father was the dockmaster. He controlled everything that moved on or off this island. James had evidence, records, proof. Harlan offered to buy my house. Of course he did. Grace's smile was sad and knowing. That house was James's safe house, where he kept his evidence. After he disappeared, people searched for months, tore the place apart, never found anything. She looked at Maya directly. But they didn't know James like I did. He wouldn't have left something important where people could find it easily. He would have hidden it where only someone smart enough to look would ever think to search. Maya thought about the floorboard giving way under her weight, about things hidden beneath, about a compass that pointed the wrong direction. There was a woman with him, she said. In a photograph I found. Grace's face crumpled. She had to steady herself with the cane. Elena Ruiz, his partner in every way. Federal agent, too. They were going to get married after the case closed. Her voice broke. She vanished the same night. 2 bodies never recovered. 2 funerals with empty caskets. The fog swirled between them. I kept everything, Grace continued. Journals, documents, things James left in his apartment on the mainland. I've waited 50 years for someone to find what he hid. Someone brave enough to finish what he started. Can I see them? Come to my house, tomorrow afternoon. Grace gripped Maya's arm. Her fingers were cold, strong. But be careful. The families from back then, they're still here, still watching, and this island. She looked around at the fog, the dripping trees, the silence. This island protects its own, and you're not one of its own. Not yet. Maybe not ever. After Grace left, Maya stood alone in the schoolyard. Lily's voice drifted from somewhere in the fog, singing to herself. The silence had weight, like the island was holding its breath. Rita's house sat at the north end, where the forest met the rocky beach. Maya arrived after full dark fog, so thick her headlights barely penetrated 10 feet. She parked 2 blocks over like Rita had instructed, walked the rest of the way. The fog muffled her footsteps, muffled everything. She could hear the ocean but couldn't see it, could hear wind in the pines but couldn't see them move. She felt like something was walking beside her, just out of sight. Rita opened the door before Maya could knock, pulled her inside like she was saving her from drowning. I saw your headlights. Didn't want you standing exposed. The kitchen table was covered with newspapers, old clippings, yellow and brittle. Rita had been researching all day. The coffee pot was empty. She'd drunk it all. I couldn't stop, Rita said. Her eyes were red. After you left, I started pulling everything I could find about 1974. About James and Elena. About what happened here. She spread the clippings across the table. Headlines shouted from decades past. Federal agents missing. Boat found drifting. Investigation stalls. James Hartley and Elena Ruiz. Rita pointed to a photograph. The same couple from Maya's Polaroid, young and smiling. They were this close to breaking a major smuggling operation. Then they vanished. Within 3 months, the investigation was shut down. Why? Because the people they were investigating had reach. Rita pulled out more clippings. Her hands moved fast, nervous. The lead investigator was transferred to Alaska. The prosecutor took a job in D.C. The case files were sealed under national security, and the island went quiet again, like nothing had ever happened. Maya studied the photograph. James had his arm around Elena's waist. They looked happy. They looked like they believed they could change things. The bearer bonds, Maya said. What do they prove? That money was moving. Big money. These bonds are untraceable, untaxable. Perfect for hiding wealth from the government or from partners you don't trust. Rita sat back. But the bonds aren't the real evidence. They're insurance, proof that money existed. The real evidence would be records, a ledger showing who paid what to whom. Dates, amounts, names. And you think James hid that too? If he hid the bonds, he hid something more important. Rita picked up the compass, turned it slowly. This doesn't point north. Northwest. To specific coordinates. He remagnetized it. Rita's voice was almost reverent. Sailors used to do that. Create a compass that pointed to a specific magnetic signature. Usually a buried metal container. She looked at Maya. You're going to follow it. I have to know what's out there. Then you have to be smart. Rita leaned forward. Don't go during the day. Don't tell anyone. And for God's sake, don't go alone. I'm telling you. I work at a bank. I know secrets. Rita's smile was tight. And I know what it's like to be an outsider here. My grandparents came to this island 40 years ago. Some people still won't sit next to me at church. They talked until the coffee was gone and midnight had come and gone. Rita made copies of the clippings, wrote down names in careful handwriting. Cross, Morrison, Keller. Families that still ran the island, still controlled the money, still decided who belonged and who didn't. When Maya finally left, the fog had gotten thicker. She couldn't see her car until she was standing next to it. The walk back felt like moving through water, through something that resisted. And all the way home, she had the feeling that something was following her, watching from inside the fog, waiting. Grace's house smelled like old books and lavender. Maya came the next afternoon, after dropping Lily at school. The fog had finally lifted, but the sky was still gray, heavy, threatening rain that wouldn't come. Grace's living room was a shrine to the dead. Photographs covered every surface. James as a boy, James in uniform, James on a boat with Elena, both of them laughing at something off camera, newspaper clippings in frames, medals in shadow boxes. A life interrupted. Grace brought tea Maya couldn't drink. Her hands shook carrying the tray. I've lived with this alone for 50 years, the old woman said. Some days I thought I was going crazy, that I was just a mother who couldn't accept her son was gone. She set down the tray. But then you showed up, and I knew. I knew James had left something for someone to find. She opened a journal, leather-bound, pages swollen with age. This was Elena's. James kept it after everything. I found it in his apartment when I cleaned out his things. Maya read the last entry. The 14th of November, 1974. Elena's handwriting was neat, precise. Tomorrow we meet the contact. Hand over the ledger. James says once it's in federal hands, we'll be safe. I'm not convinced. These people have long arms, long memories. But the compass will remember where the truth is, even if we can't, even if we're not here to tell it. The ledger, Maya said. Financial records? Everything. Names, dates, payments, routes. Every transaction from 1971 to 1974. Proof of who funded the operation. Proof of corruption that went all the way to the judge's chambers. Grace's voice was steady, but her hands weren't. James and Elena were supposed to hand it over to their contact. But they never made it to the meeting. Someone killed them first. The boat was found drifting. No signs of struggle. The official report said they fell overboard in rough seas. But the weather was calm that night. I checked. Grace picked up a photograph of her son. Young, smiling, alive. They were murdered, and whoever did it made it look like an accident. Maya held the compass. The needle pointed northwest. Patient, persistent. The ledger is still out there, at these coordinates. That's what I believe. Yes. Grace set down the photograph. And that's what people like Harlan have been searching for. Because if that ledger surfaces, it won't just destroy reputations. It'll unravel family fortunes, political careers, legacies that have stood for 3 generations. They'll kill to keep it hidden. They already have. Grace's eyes were dry now. 50 years of tears used up. Twice. Maybe more. Who knows how many people have gotten close and disappeared quietly. This is a small island. The ocean is very deep. The house creaked around them, old wood settling, or maybe listening. "There's something else," Grace said quietly. "Something I've never told anyone." She pulled out a small box from beneath the coffee table. Inside was a cassette tape, unlabeled. "I found this with Elena's journal. I've never played it. I was too afraid." She handed it to Maya. "But maybe it's time." Maya turned the tape over in her hands. It felt heavy, important. "What do you think is on it?" "The truth," Grace said simply, in Elena's voice. That night, the silence was different. Heavier, fuller. Maya lay in her sleeping bag, listening to Lily breathe, listening to the house settle around them, listening to the ocean in the distance, steady and patient. The compass sat beside her pillow. The tape sat beside the compass. She hadn't played it yet. Wasn't sure she was ready. Outside, an owl called. Once, twice, then nothing. Maya picked up the compass, held it in the moonlight coming through the broken window. The needle pointed northwest, unwavering, toward something buried 50 years ago, toward truth that had been waiting in the dark. She thought about walking away, about taking Lily and disappearing somewhere the fog couldn't follow, somewhere the island couldn't watch. But she thought about James and Elena, too, about how young they'd been, how certain they could make things right, about Grace, who'd spent half a century waiting for justice that never came. Her phone buzzed. Text message. Unknown number. "We know about the bonds. We know about the compass. We know where you went tonight. Last warning. Leave or your daughter learns what happened to the others who stayed too long." Maya's blood went cold. They'd mentioned Lily. Not as a threat, as a promise. She looked at her sleeping daughter, 9 years old, dreaming innocent dreams. Safe. For now. Maya stood. The floorboards creaked under her feet. The house seemed to hold its breath. She grabbed her jacket. The compass went in one pocket, the tape in the other. She wasn't running. She was done being afraid. If the island wanted to see what she'd do, she'd show it. She'd follow the compass, find the ledger, finish what James and Elena started. And if Harlan or anyone else tried to stop her, they'd learn that single mothers protecting their children were more dangerous than any criminal they'd ever faced. Outside, the fog was rolling back in. The ocean whispered against the rocks. And somewhere in the darkness, something was watching, waiting to see what she'd do next. Maya didn't tell Lily where she was going. She left her daughter with Rita, said she had errands on the mainland. The lie tasted like rust. But the truth, "I'm following a compass your father never knew about to find evidence that got 2 people killed 50 years ago," would have been worse. Rita understood. She'd looked at Maya with eyes that said, "Be careful," and come back alive without speaking a word. Before she left, Maya sat in her car and played the cassette tape. She'd found an old player in the back of Rita's closet, pushed the tape in with trembling hands, pressed play. Static hissed. Then a woman's voice, young, steady, trying to sound braver than she felt. "My name is Elena Ruiz, federal agent, badge number 4782. Today is the 14th of November, 1974. If you're hearing this, then James and I didn't make it to the handoff, which means they got to us first." More static. A deep breath. "The ledger contains everything. 3 years of financial records. Payments from the Cross family, the Morrisons, the Kellers, all the families that run this island. They've been funding a smuggling operation since 1971. Drugs, mostly, but also weapons. Offshore money, the kind that disappears into accounts no government can touch." A pause. Wind in the background. Waves. "Judge Theodore Cross has been taking bribes to seal records, to make arrests disappear, to protect the operation. We have dates, amounts, signatures, everything needed to prosecute." Elena's voice cracked slightly. "We hid the ledger at the coordinates James marked. If something happens to us, the compass will point the way. It's remagnetized to a specific location. Only someone who thinks like an investigator would figure it out. Only someone who cares enough to look. Another long pause. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. James wanted me to record this. Said if we died, at least the truth would survive. He's always been optimistic like that. Believes in justice. In doing the right thing. A man's voice in the background. James. Too distant to make out words. Elena laughed. Sad and sweet. He says hello to whoever finds this. Says thank you for finishing what we couldn't. Says, her voice broke completely. Says he's sorry we weren't brave enough to see it through ourselves. The tape ended. Maya sat in the silence that followed. Tears on her face, she didn't remember crying. Elena had been 26 years old. James, 28. They died trying to do something good. Something right. And 50 years later, their killers were still free. Still powerful. Still protected by the island that had swallowed their secret. Maya wiped her eyes. Started the car. Not anymore. The coordinates led to the North Shore, a rocky outcrop accessible only at low tide. Maya checked the tide tables on her phone. Low tide at 2:47 a.m. She had a 4-hour window. She borrowed Grace's old fishing boat. Small, quiet, with an engine that sounded like it was held together with prayers. Grace had handed over the keys with shaking hands. "Come back," the old woman whispered. "Please." Maya had promised. Wasn't sure it was a promise she could keep. The night was black. No moon, no stars. Just darkness, and the sound of water against the hull. The compass sat on the seat beside her, glowing faintly in the light from her phone. The needle pointed steadily northwest, toward truth that had waited half a century to be found. The ocean was calm, too calm, like it was holding its breath. Maya cut the engine 50 yards from the outcrop, let the boat drift the rest of the way. The rocks rose from the water like broken teeth. She tied off to a boulder and climbed out carefully. The stones were slick with seaweed, sharp with barnacles. One wrong step and she'd split her skull open. She moved slowly, following the compass. The needle pulled her toward a crevice between two massive rocks. There, wedged deep in the crack, a metal box. Military grade, sealed with industrial resin, covered in decades of barnacles and rust but intact. Maya's hands shook as she pried it loose. It was heavier than she expected. The weight of evidence, the weight of justice delayed. She smashed the seal with a rock. The box opened with a crack that echoed off the water. Inside, wrapped in layers of deteriorating plastic and oilcloth, a ledger, leather-bound, every page filled with precise handwriting, names, dates, amounts, signatures, and beneath it, another cassette tape, labeled in James's handwriting, Insurance, Recorded Confessions. Maya sat on the wet rocks, holding proof that could destroy families, end legacies, send people to prison who'd spent their entire lives believing they were untouchable. She should have felt victorious. Instead, she felt exposed, like something was watching from the darkness. She heard the engine before she saw the lights. A boat, bigger than hers, faster, cutting through the water with purpose. Maya scrambled back to Grace's boat, shoved the ledger and tapes into a waterproof bag, started the engine. It coughed twice before catching. The other boat's spotlight hit her, blinding white. Harlan's voice carried across the water, amplified, calm. "Maya, let's talk about this. Woman to woman, parent to parent." She gunned the engine. The boat lurched forward. Behind her, Harlan's boat surged in pursuit. The chase was brief and brutal. Grace's boat was old, slow. Harlan's was new, fast. Within minutes, he'd cut her off. His boat blocked her path back to the marina. Two men stood on the deck beside him. One she recognized as the island's sheriff. The other was a stranger in expensive clothes. They all held flashlights. Nothing else. But Maya knew what could be hidden in pockets. "Kill your engine," Harlan said. Not a request. Maya's hand went to the waterproof bag. She could throw it overboard. Let it sink. But then what? Lily was still on the island. Still vulnerable. She killed the engine. Harlan's boat pulled alongside. He stepped onto Grace's boat without asking. Moved like he owned it. Owned everything. "You've been busy," he said. "Asking questions. Making friends with people who should know better." His smile was pleasant. His eyes were not. Grace always was sentimental. Rita always was naive. And you're just desperate. "I found the ledger." "I know. I've been watching." He nodded toward the waterproof bag. "May I?" "No." His smile didn't change. "You have a daughter. Lily, right? 9 years old. Asthma. Stays with Rita Chen tonight while her mother plays detective." He let that hang. Rita's house is very isolated. Anything could happen. Fire, break-in, carbon monoxide. These old houses, they're dangerous. Maya's blood turned to ice. "You touch her." "I won't have to." Harlan held out his hand. "Give me the ledger, the tapes, the bonds you found, everything James and Elena hid, and you and Lily can leave the island tomorrow. I'll even give you money, enough to start over somewhere nice, somewhere safe. And if I don't? Then the sheriff here will find evidence that you've been stealing from the bank where Rita works, that you've been manufacturing evidence, that you're an unstable woman trying to extort money from a respected island family." His voice hardened. "And while you're being processed, held, investigated well, accidents happen, especially to children who wander off while their mothers aren't watching." The ocean whispered beneath them. Maya thought about Lily, about her daughter's laugh, her drawings, the way she said mom like it was the safest word in the world. She thought about James and Elena, about how they'd died believing justice would come, about Grace, who'd waited 50 years, about doing what was right versus doing what kept your child alive. There was no contest. "The bag's waterproof," Maya said, "but not airtight. If I throw it overboard, you'll spend years searching and never find it." "True." Harlan's smile was back. "But Lily would still have an accident, and you'd live with that, knowing you chose the memory of 2 dead strangers over your own daughter." He was right, and he knew it. Maya handed over the bag. Harlan opened it, pulled out the ledger, flipped through pages, his face unreadable, found the cassette tapes, held them up to the light. "My father's on these recordings, isn't he?" "Yes." "Judge Cross, too. The whole operation." He closed the bag. 50 years of my family's reputation, gone. Because 2 federal agents couldn't mind their own business. They were doing their jobs. They were being naive." He looked at her. "Justice is just a word people use when they want to take things from people who have more than they do. James and Elena learned that. Now you've learned it too." He stepped back onto his boat. "You have 12 hours to pack and leave. After that, Lily's safety is your responsibility, not mine." The boats separated. Maya watched them motor away, the ledger and tapes disappearing into the darkness. She'd lost. James and Elena had died for nothing. Grace had waited 50 years for nothing. And Maya had proven that when it came down to it, even the most righteous cause couldn't compete with a mother's love. She sat in the rocking boat and cried. She was halfway back to the marina when she saw the lights. Not boat lights, vehicle lights. On the shore. Lots of them. Police lights. Federal lights. Maya's heart stopped. Had Harlan called them already? Was this the frame-up he'd promised? She pulled into the marina slowly. Prepared to be arrested. Prepared for anything. Except what she saw. Harlan in handcuffs. The sheriff in handcuffs. The stranger in expensive clothes being read his rights. And standing on the dock, wearing an FBI jacket, Derek Chen, Rita's younger brother. He saw Maya, and smiled, relieved. Thank God. Rita said you were out on the water. We've been waiting. I don't understand. We've been monitoring this island for 6 months, ever since Grace Hartley contacted the FBI. He helped her onto the dock. You buying that shack that accelerated everything? We knew Harlan would make a move if he thought someone found James's evidence. Maya's head spun. The ledger. We have it. Audio recording from the exchange. Harlan confessing on tape that his father was involved, that he's been covering it up for years, that he threatened you and your daughter. Derek's smile widened. Conspiracy. Obstruction of justice. Witness intimidation. He's done. But I gave him everything. You gave him what he thought was everything. Derek pulled out another waterproof bag. Rita helped you make copies yesterday, remember? The real ledger and tapes are here. What you gave Harlan were reproductions. Good enough to verify what they were, but not the originals. Maya stared. Rita has been working with us since Grace first reached out. Derek squeezed her shoulder. You were never alone in this. We just needed you to be bait. To make Harlan desperate enough to show his hand. Bait. She'd been bait. And she hadn't even known. My daughter. Safe. With Rita and 2 federal agents at her house. Has been all night. Derek's face softened. I'm sorry we couldn't tell you. But we needed your reactions to be genuine. Needed Harlan to believe he was winning. Maya wanted to feel relief. Instead, she felt numb. Used. Even by the good guys. Grace knew? She asked. Grace planned it. Derek smiled sadly. 50 years she's been waiting for this moment. For someone brave enough to walk into that shack and find what her son left behind. You were it, Maya. You finished what James and Elena started. Maya looked at Harlan being loaded into a police car, at the sheriff trying to negotiate his cooperation, at the island's power structure crumbling in real time. Justice. Finally. She should have felt victorious. Instead, she just felt tired. And more alone than ever. Maya drove straight to Rita's house. Didn't stop at the marina. Didn't wait for Derek's explanations. Just got in her car and drove through the pre-dawn darkness like something was chasing her. Because something was. The truth. Rita opened the door before Maya could knock. Behind her, Lily was asleep on the couch, wrapped in blankets. 2 agents sat at the kitchen table, drinking coffee. They nodded at Maya. Professional. Polite. Like they hadn't just used her as bait without asking. Maya scooped up Lily without waking her, held her daughter against her chest, felt the steady rhythm of her breathing. Real. Safe. Alive. Rita started. Don't. She carried Lily out to the car, strapped her into the back seat. Her daughter stirred but didn't wake, just mumbled something about starfish and drifted back to sleep. Maya sat in the driver's seat, gripped the steering wheel, tried to remember how to breathe. Someone tapped on the window. Grace Hartley stood there in the gray light, leaning on her cane. Her face was wet with tears. Maya rolled down the window, said nothing. I'm sorry, Grace whispered. I'm so sorry. You used me. Yes. You put my daughter in danger. Yes, Grace's voice cracked. I put you both in danger. I used you. I manipulated you. I did everything I swore I'd never do because... She stopped, composed herself. Because I've been waiting 50 years, and when you showed up, desperate enough to buy that shack, brave enough to start digging, I saw a chance. Maybe my only chance. To get justice. To get my son back. Grace's tears fell freely now. Not literally. I know he's gone. But his name, his reputation, the truth of what he died trying to do. That's all I had left of him. And I'd do anything, sacrifice anything to protect it. Maya stared at her. This elderly woman who'd seemed so kind, so gentle, so harmless. You're exactly like Harlan, Maya said quietly. Grace flinched like she'd been slapped. No. I'm nothing like. You both put your family legacy above everything else, above safety, above truth, above the people who got hurt in the process. Maya's voice was steady. Cold. You just convinced yourself your legacy was more righteous than his. Grace opened her mouth, closed it, had no answer. The difference, Maya continued, is that I chose. When it mattered, I chose my daughter over your son's memory. And I'd do it again. Every time. She rolled up the window, started to drive away. Grace's voice carried through the glass. Broken. Desperate. I know. And that's why it worked. That's why Harlan believed you'd trade everything. Because you're a real mother, not someone playing games. Maya stopped the car. Sat there in the gray dawn light. Grace leaned against the window, crying openly now. I didn't have a choice either, she said. The FBI wouldn't move without proof. Proof we couldn't get without someone inside. Someone Harlan would believe. Someone desperate enough to buy that shack, but smart enough to figure out what James left behind. She wiped her eyes. It had to be real. Your fear. Your choices. Your love for Lily. If you'd known it was a sting, you wouldn't have reacted the same way. And Harlan would have known. So, you made me bait. I made you the hero of a story I couldn't finish myself. Grace pressed her hand against the glass. And I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. But Maya, you finished it. After 50 years, my son finally got justice. Because of you. Maya looked at Lily sleeping in the back seat. Then at Grace. Then at the island waking up around them. At the place she'd bought because she had nowhere else to go. The place that had almost swallowed her whole. I'm leaving, Maya said. Today. As soon as I pack. Grace nodded. I understand. Do you? Because I don't think you do. Maya's voice shook. You talk about justice like it's this pure thing. This holy mission. But justice got your son killed. Justice almost got my daughter killed. Justice is just another word for revenge, when the people seeking it don't have to pay the price themselves. That's not. I found the ledger. I followed the compass. I gave Harlan exactly what he wanted. Because protecting Lily mattered more than any of this. Maya gestured at the island. At everything. And you know what? I don't regret it. I'd burn that ledger myself if it meant keeping her safe. That's what real love looks like. Not 50 years of plotting. Not using strangers as weapons. Real love is choosing the person in front of you over the ghost you can't let go. Grace stood silent, tears streaming down her weathered face. You're right, she whispered finally. You're absolutely right. I've been so focused on getting James back that I forgot he'd hate what I've become. He'd hate that I put you in danger. He'd hate all of this. She turned away, started walking back toward the house, then stopped. The shack, Grace called back. It's yours. No strings. I had the deed transferred last night. Paid in full. And there's money. The FBI is offering a finder's fee for the bonds. $2 million. It's yours. For finishing what James started. For being brave when I couldn't be. Maya's throat tightened. I don't want. It's not about what you want. Grace smiled sadly. It's about what you've earned. What you deserve. Take it. Leave. Build a life somewhere Lily can be safe. Somewhere you don't have to choose between love and justice. She walked away, leaning heavily on her cane. Maya sat in the car, watching the sun rise over an island that had tried to kill her. An island she'd saved despite itself. Derek found her an hour later. She'd driven back to the shack, started packing their few belongings into boxes. Can we talk? He asked from the doorway. No. Maya, I need you to understand. You used me. She kept packing, didn't look at him. You and Grace and Rita. You all used me. Used my desperation. Used my daughter. And you think because it worked out, because the bad guy went to jail, that makes it okay. It doesn't. You're right. Derek stepped inside, sat on one of the folding chairs. But would you have helped if we'd asked? If I'd knocked on your door the day you moved in and said, "Hey, want to risk your life and your daughter's safety to catch a 50-year-old conspiracy?" Would you have said yes? Maya stopped packing. No, she admitted. Then we did what we had to do. Just like you did what you had to do on that boat. He leaned forward. You chose Lily. That's what mothers do. We chose catching Harlan. That's what investigators do. Nobody's wrong here. We're just people trying to do what we think is right with incomplete information. That's a convenient philosophy. It's the only one that lets me sleep at night. He pulled out a folder, set it on the floor between them. This is Harlan's full confession, recorded last night. He gave up everyone. His father, Judge Cross, 3 other families, 50 years of corruption. Names, dates, accounts, everything. Maya looked at the folder but didn't touch it. The second tape, the one James made it, has recordings of dock meetings, Derek continued. His father and the judge planning drops, discussing payoffs, laughing about how easy it was to control a small island. His voice hardened. They talked about killing James and Elena, how to make it look like an accident, how to split their assets afterward. They bragged about it. On tape, in their own voices, Derek stood. 30 people are going to prison because of what you found. Families are going to get closure. The island's going to heal. And James and Elena finally get to rest. And I get $2 million. You get to build a life. Somewhere safe. Somewhere clean. Isn't that what you wanted when you bought this place? Maya looked around the shack. At the rotting floorboards she'd pulled up. At the walls she'd patched with duct tape. At the broken windows she'd covered with plastic. She'd bought this place because she had nothing. Now she was leaving with everything. And somehow, it still felt like a loss. The compass, she said quietly. Can I keep it? Derek smiled. Grace insisted. Said James would have wanted you to have it. Something about truth always finding its way home. He left the folder on the floor, walked to the door, paused. For what it's worth, you made every right choice. You protected your daughter. You found the truth. You proved that sometimes the best people are the ones who don't think they're heroes. He looked back. James and Elena would have liked you. After he left, Maya sat in the empty shack, held the compass in her hand. The needle pointed north now. True north. No more magnetic tricks. No more hidden coordinates. Just simple, honest direction. She thought about James and Elena, about how they'd died trying to save an island that killed them for it. About Grace, who'd spent 50 years becoming the kind of person her son would have hated. About herself, who'd come here broken and was leaving whole but hollow. The sun streamed through the broken windows. Outside, birds sang. The ocean whispered. The island was beautiful in the morning light. It had always been beautiful. That's what made it dangerous. Maya stood, put the compass in her pocket, finished packing. By noon, she and Lily were on the ferry, leaving Crow's End Island behind. And with it, the ghosts who'd finally been laid to rest. 6 months later, Maya stood in a house that didn't leak when it rained. Portland. A quiet neighborhood with good schools and neighbors who smiled without wanting anything. The house was small but solid. 3 bedrooms. A backyard where Lily had planted tomatoes that were actually growing. Normal. Safe. Boring in all the best ways. Maya's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A text from Rita. Grace passed away last night. Peacefully. In her sleep. Thought you should know. Maya set down her coffee cup, stared out the window at Lily playing with the neighbor's dog. She hadn't spoken to Grace since leaving the island. Hadn't answered her letters, hadn't returned her calls. Now she never would. She picked up the compass from where it sat on the windowsill. She'd kept it despite everything, despite wanting to throw it into the ocean, despite wanting to forget the island existed. The needle pointed north. True north. Just a regular compass now. No tricks, no hidden coordinates. But when she held it, she could still feel the weight of what it had led her to. The truth, the danger, the choice that had almost destroyed her. Her phone rang. Rita. I'm sorry, Rita said when Maya answered. I know you two weren't. I know it was complicated. How did she seem? At the end? At peace. Finally. Rita paused. She left something for you. In her will. Asked me to tell you about it. Maya's throat tightened. Rita, I don't want. It's not money. It's a letter. And a request. Rita's voice was gentle. She wants you to decide what happens to the shack. She transferred the deed to you months ago, but she never told you what she hoped you'd do with it. I don't owe her anything. I know, but maybe you owe James and Elena something, or maybe you owe it to yourself to have the last word. After they hung up, Maya sat at her kitchen table, the same table where she and Lily did homework every night, where they ate dinner and talked about normal things like math tests and whether cats were better than dogs. The finder's fee had bought them this life. $2 million after taxes. Enough for the house, enough for Lily's college fund, enough to never be desperate again. But some nights, Maya still woke up thinking about the boat, about Harlan's smile, about the moment she'd handed over the ledger believing she'd failed everyone who'd ever trusted her, about being right for the wrong reasons. The letter arrived 3 days later. Grace's handwriting, shaky but legible. Dear Maya, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. What I did to you was unforgivable, even if the outcome was just. But I'm writing to tell you something I should have said that morning when you left. You were right about me. I became exactly like the people who killed my son. I sacrificed others for my own mission. I told myself it was different because my cause was righteous. But righteousness is just another word for pride when it costs someone else everything. You taught me that. A single mother who had nothing taught an old woman who thought she'd learned everything. The shack is yours. Do whatever you want with it. Burn it down if it helps you heal. But if you have any mercy left, and I think you do, because mothers like you always do, consider this. Make it something James and Elena would have wanted. Something that helps people who are desperate. People like you were. People the island has always ignored. Not as penance for my sins, but as proof that even broken things can become beautiful again. Thank you for finishing what my son started. Thank you for proving that love matters more than legacy. And I'm sorry for everything. Grace. Maya read it twice, then set it on the table and cried. Not for Grace, not for the island, but for the version of herself who'd bought that shack 6 months ago, who'd been so desperate she'd seen $12,000 as her only chance, who'd found something worth $80 million and traded it without hesitation for her daughter's safety. That version of herself had been brave in ways she was only now beginning to understand. 2 months later, Maya and Lily took the ferry back to Crow's End Island. Just for the day. Just to see. The island looked different. Smaller, somehow. Less threatening in the afternoon Sunday. The shack stood where she'd left it. Still rotting. Still covered in moss. But the floorboards had been replaced. The roof patched. Someone, probably Rita, had been maintaining it. Lily walked through the rooms. Fascinated. You lived here? For a little while. It's creepy. It was. Maya smiled. But it had good bones. They stood on the porch together, looking out at the forest, at the ocean beyond. Mom? Lily's voice was quiet. Why did we really leave? Maya had told her daughter a simplified version. That they'd found something valuable. That it had belonged to someone else. That they'd done the right thing and gotten a reward. But Lily was 9 now. Almost 10. Old enough for more truth. I found something that powerful people wanted, Maya said carefully. And they threatened to hurt you to get it. So I gave it to them. Because you matter more than anything else in the world. Lily processed this. But you still got money? It's complicated. Did you do the right thing? Maya thought about it. About Grace and James and Elena. About Harlan in prison. About 30 families destroyed. About justice that tasted like ash. I did the right thing for us, she said finally. That's all I know how to do. Lily nodded, seemed satisfied. Went back to exploring. Maya pulled out the compass, held it one last time. Then she walked to the edge of the porch and threw it as hard as she could. It spun through the air, catching sunlight, before disappearing into the undergrowth. Let the island keep its secrets. She was done carrying them. 3 weeks later, construction began on the shack. Not a restoration, a transformation. Maya hired local contractors, paid them well, turned the rotting fisherman's cottage into something new. A shelter for women leaving dangerous situations, for single mothers with nowhere else to go, for people who needed a place to catch their breath before starting over. She called it the Hartley Ruiz House. Not a monument, not a memorial. Just a place that did what James and Elena had tried to do. Protect people who needed protecting. Grace would have approved. Maya would never know if that mattered. But 6 months after that, she got a letter from the first woman who'd stayed there. A single mother with 2 kids. Fleeing an abusive ex-husband. No money, no options. You saved my life, the letter said. Not just by giving me a place to stay, but by proving that sometimes people help just because it's right. Not because they want something. Not because they're keeping score. Just because they can. Thank you for being the kind of person who does that. Maya put the letter on her refrigerator, next to Lily's drawings and grocery lists and permission slips for field trips. Normal life. Beautiful life. Built on a foundation of choices she'd made in the dark. And somehow, that was enough. 2 years after Maya bought a rotting shack for $12,000, the Hartley Ruiz house celebrated its first anniversary. 43 women had passed through its doors, 43 mothers and 72 children. All of them desperate. All of them looking for a place to breathe. Maya didn't run it. She funded it. Visited sometimes, but mostly she let people who knew what they were doing do the work. She had her own life now. Lily was 11, thriving in school, talking about becoming a marine biologist like her mom used to be. Maya had gone back to school too, online classes, working toward the degree she'd abandoned when she got pregnant. When life had gotten complicated, it was still complicated, but different now. She thought about the shack sometimes, about the floorboard that had given way under her weight, about what she'd found beneath. Not just bearer bonds and ledgers and cassette tapes, but proof that sometimes desperate choices lead to something better. That sometimes what looks like failure is actually the bravest thing you can do. James and Elena had died trying to expose corruption. Grace had spent 50 years seeking justice. And Maya had just been trying to keep her daughter safe. But somehow, all of it had mattered. All of it had meant something. The rotting shack by the ocean had held secrets worth killing for. But it also held something more valuable. The truth that love matters more than legacy. That protecting the people in front of you is more heroic than any grand mission. That sometimes the best inheritance isn't treasure. It's the chance to do better than the people who came before. Maya stood in her backyard, watching Lily water the tomato plants that were twice as tall as last year. Her daughter was laughing. Safe. Free. And Maya realized something she hadn't understood on that desperate night when she'd first pried up those rotting boards. She hadn't found a fortune hidden under the floorboards. She'd found herself. Sometimes what's buried isn't treasure, it's the truth we need to become who we're meant to be. If stories like this remind you why integrity matters more than wealth, why protecting those we love is the highest calling, hit subscribe. Tomorrow's story will take you somewhere unexpected. See you there.